The Plumbers. Behind every alien threat Ben Tennyson ever faced stands the organization that was fighting them long before he found the Omnitrix, the Plumbers. The name is a deliberate joke. They're called Plumbers because they deal with the leaks, the alien incursions that slip through into places they shouldn't be, and the ordinary-sounding name is cover for one of the most important institutions in the entire franchise. In the original series, the Plumbers are presented as a secret, semi-retired, Men in Black-style human agency that once defended Earth from extraterrestrial threats, and Ben is stunned to learn that his own grandfather, Max Tennyson, wasn't just a laid-back RV-driving grandpa. He was one of the most legendary plumbers who ever lived. Then the scope explodes. By the later series, the Plumbers are revealed to be not just an Earth outfit, but a galaxy-spanning intergalactic police force, an interstellar law enforcement agency with agents of every alien species, badges that double as tools, and jurisdiction across the cosmos, with the old Earth branch folded into the larger organization. This is the backbone of the good guys in Ben 10. The structure that gives Ben allies, resources, and a moral framework larger than himself. Max's status as a legendary plumber is what ties Ben's whole heroic legacy together, and the badge becomes a symbol of belonging to something bigger than one kid with a watch. The Plumbers are also where Ben's own team earns its place. He and his friends serve as Plumbers' helpers, junior agents backed by veteran magisters, and the badge they carry can track threats, open doors across the galaxy, and call in reinforcements. It gives the show a sense that Ben's adventures are part of an organized, ongoing war rather than random monster fights. The Plumbers are proof that Ben was never truly alone against the darkness. There was always an organization, hidden in plain sight behind a silly name, that had been holding the line for generations before he was born, and would keep holding it long after. An institution that turned a boy with a watch into part of something that spans the stars. The Galactic Enforcers. Early in Ben's career, the show introduced a trio of alien superheroes who function as the franchise's version of a cosmic super team, and meeting them taught Ben one of his most important early lessons. The Galactic Enforcers are a group of intergalactic heroes empowered and bound by something called the Galactic Code of Conduct, roaming the universe, protecting planets from major threats. Think of them as a small, self-serious Justice League operating on a galactic scale. Their leader is the mighty Ultimos, joined by teammates with their own distinct powers, and when they cross paths with Ben, they're pursuing dangerous bounty hunters and villains too big for a single hero to handle. Ben, being a cocky 10-year-old, is thrilled at the chance to join a real superhero team and is briefly allowed to tag along as a temporary member. But the Enforcers hold themselves to a strict code, rules about how heroes conduct themselves, restraint, responsibility, and Ben's brash, reckless, show-off attitude clashes hard with their discipline. The lesson lands: being a hero isn't just about having powers and winning fights, it's about the code you hold yourself to. There's a nice irony in it, too. The Enforcers are powerful but a little pompous and rigid, while Ben is powerful and completely undisciplined. And the episode gently suggests that the ideal hero is somewhere in between. Someone with the Enforcer's code and Ben's heart and improvisation. The Galactic Enforcers matter because they show Ben and the audience that his little watch has plugged him into a much larger universe of heroism with standards he'll have to grow into, and that there are other protectors out there carrying the same burden across worlds he'll never even visit. Hit the like and subscribe button to see more videos like this. Leave a comment on your favorite Ben 10 group. Let's get back into the video. Because for every heroic team in this universe, there are a dozen groups that exist to make Ben's life a nightmare. The Circus Freaks. Some of Ben's earliest and most memorable enemies came from a carnival, and they're proof that Ben 10 could make its Monster of the Week gangs genuinely unsettling. The Circus Freaks are a trio of sideshow performers turned criminals working under the horrifying clown Zombozo. The group consisting of Frightwig, who wields her prehensile razor-sharp hair like whips, Acid Breath, who exhales corrosive toxic fumes strong enough to melt through metal, and Thumbskull, a hulking brute of raw strength. Together they operate as Zombozo's enforcers, running heists and terror under the twisted banner of a nightmarish circus. What makes them stick in fans' memories is the tone. Zombozo and his freaks are drawn from the deep well of coulrophobia, the fear of clowns, and their episodes lean into genuine horror imagery that unsettled a lot of young viewers, with Zombozo literally feeding on people's laughter and joy until they're left hollow. The Circus Freaks themselves are recurring henchmen who pop up across multiple series, each with a clean, memorable power gimmick that makes them easy to root against. They represent the classic Ben 10 formula at its best. Take a familiar, real-world fear, like a creepy carnival, populate it with a small gang of distinctly powered goons, and turn it into a monster fight that sticks with kids long after the episode ends. Their boss, Zombozo, is genuinely one of the franchise's most nightmarish villains precisely because he isn't cosmic at all. He's a predatory clown who drains the happiness out of his victims until they're empty husks, a monster built entirely out of childhood fear rather than sci-fi spectacle. They're not universe-ending threats. They're something scarier at that age. The evil hiding inside a place that's supposed to be fun. The reminder that not every monster comes from space, and that the carnival at the edge of town might be the most dangerous thing Ben ever walks into. The Vreedle Brothers. Not every villain group in Ben 10 is menacing, some are just chaos with guns, and the Vreedle Brothers are the funniest disaster in the entire franchise. Octagon and Rhomboid Vreedle are a pair of dim-witted, trigger-happy, hillbilly-accented alien mercenaries who blow up first and fail to think later, tearing through the galaxy as bounty hunters, cleaners, and hired muscle for whoever's paying. They're a walking punchline, barely competent, wildly destructive, obsessed with firepower and blowing things up by the book of their own nonsensical laws. And yet they keep coming back because they're clones, mass-produced by their ma, which means killing a Vreedle brother barely inconveniences them. There's always another one ready to roll off the line. That running gag turns them into an endlessly recurring nuisance, popping up across series to be hired by bigger villains, cause enormous collateral damage, and stumble away to fight another day. The Vreedle Brothers serve an important role in the show's ecosystem. They're the comic relief faction, the freelance chaos agents who can be dropped into any story to blow up a spaceship and lighten the tone without ever being a genuine existential threat. In a franchise packed with genocidal empires and universe-cleansing purists, the Vreedles are the reminder that Ben 10's galaxy is also just a weird, funny, dangerous place full of idiots with enormous weapons. And the fact that they're clones churned out by their overbearing ma means the show can blow them up for a gag and bring them right back next season, no explanation required. A self-renewing supply of dim-witted destruction. They're proof the show never took itself so seriously that it couldn't laugh, and that even a universe full of genocidal empires still has room for two idiots with a spaceship full of bombs and no idea what they're doing. The Forever Knights. The most persistent human villains in the entire franchise are a secret society that has existed for hundreds of years, and their whole ideology is a dark mirror of Ben's. The Forever Knights are an ancient order of armored human knights founded long ago by a legendary figure known as Sir George, dedicated to a single obsessive goal, acquiring alien technology and weaponry, not to protect Earth openly like the Plumbers, but to arm themselves against what they see as the alien menace, and ultimately to destroy all alien life. They're human supremacists in shining armor, a centuries-old conspiracy hoarding extraterrestrial tech in hidden castles, obsessed with dragons and relics and the old legend of their founder slaying a great beast. What makes them fascinating is what happens over time. After their founder Sir George departed, the Forever Knights fractured. Without a single leader, the Order splintered into rival factions, each with its own interpretation of the original mission, each led by a different self-proclaimed Forever King, some pursuing money, some pursuing power, some still clinging to the original anti-alien crusade. So the Forever Knights aren't one villain group, they're a whole civil war of villain groups wearing the same armor, fighting each other as often as they fight Ben. They embody a chilling idea the show returns to again and again. That fear of the alien, of the other, curdles into something that lasts for centuries and turns even humans into monsters. Their founder Sir George is eventually revealed to be far more than a legend, an immortal warrior thousands of years old who once wielded a legendary sword and battled an ancient, reality-threatening alien entity, meaning the order that began as genuine planetary defense slowly decayed over centuries into the paranoid, fractured tech-hoarding cult Ben fights. That decay is the whole point. The Forever Knights are a cautionary tale about what happens when a noble cause outlives the person who gave it meaning, curdling across generations into something its founder would barely recognize. The Knights are the enemy Ben can never fully defeat, because you can't kill an ideology with a punch, and every time he scatters one faction, another rises somewhere else wearing the same armor and telling itself the same old story. The -10. Sooner or later, every hero's rogues gallery decides to team up, and when Ben's enemies banded together, they called themselves the -10, a darkened version of Ben 10 himself. The -10 are a mercenary supervillain team assembled from Ben's assorted individual enemies, brought together by a single mastermind for one coordinated strike. That mastermind is Driscoll, a former plumber who was dismissed from the organization and reinvented himself as a forever king, a leader of the Forever Knights, nursing a grudge and a scheme. He gathers a roster of Ben's minor villains, bounty hunters, mad scientists, powered criminals, into a strike team designed to overwhelm Ben, his grandfather Max, and his cousin Gwen all at once, and to steal a source of immense power. The threat of a coordinated villain team is real, but the show has a clever answer. Villains, by nature, don't cooperate. Ben and Gwen ultimately defeat the -10, not just with force, but by exploiting the group's egos, tricking the members into fighting over which of them is the strongest and most important, causing the whole team to collapse into infighting until it falls apart. Driscoll escapes, the others scatter, and the alliance dissolves as quickly as it formed. The -10 are the franchise's statement on the classic supervillain team-up. A group of powerful enemies is terrifying on paper, but the same selfishness that made them villains is the exact weakness that makes their alliances impossible to hold together. Vilgax's Conquerors. Standing above every other villain in Ben 10 is one warlord, and the forces he commands make him the closest thing the franchise has to a personal apocalypse. Vilgax is Ben's arch-enemy, a hulking, ruthless intergalactic conqueror who has enslaved and destroyed countless worlds long before he ever set his sights on a 10-year-old with a watch. What makes him a group as much as an individual is the army at his back. Vilgax commands legions of robotic drones, a personal fleet, and, most chillingly, the conquered champions of the worlds he's defeated. In some of his most fearsome incarnations, Vilgax has ripped the powers and freedom from the greatest heroes of 10 different planets, keeping them as enslaved trophies and unleashing them as his personal squad of superpowered warriors. His entire identity is conquest. He wants the Omnitrix because it's the ultimate weapon, a device that would let him become an army of aliens all by himself, and he pursues it across the entire franchise with relentless, patient menace. Vilgax's forces represent the scale the show is ultimately playing at. This is a being who topples whole civilizations, who has beaten and collared heroes far more experienced than Ben, and whose defeat requires Ben to grow from a reckless kid into a genuine hero. Every smaller villain group in this video is a stepping stone. Vilgax himself is a chimera sui generis, a squid-faced warlord who rebuilt his own body with cybernetics after early defeats, coming back stronger and more monstrous each time Ben beats him. A villain defined by his refusal to ever stay down. The glimpses of the future in the franchise, where an adult Ben has mastered hundreds of alien forms, still frame Vilgax as the recurring nightmare, the one foe who keeps returning across a lifetime. Vilgax and his conquered legions are the mountain at the top, the enemy who reminds Ben that the universe contains threats that see planets the way most people see chess pieces, and that growing up as a hero means growing strong enough to finally stand against something that eats worlds. The Highbreed. The darkest faction in the entire franchise doesn't want money or power or the Omnitrix. They want everyone who isn't them to cease to exist. The Highbreed are an ancient alien race convinced that their own DNA is the purest and most perfect in the universe. And from that belief, they've built an ideology of absolute genocidal supremacy. Every other species is inferior, contaminated, unworthy of existence, and must be cleansed from the galaxy. They are the show's unflinching depiction of racial purity taken to its logical, monstrous conclusion. Cold, arrogant, utterly convinced of their own superiority, orchestrating a plan to wipe out all lesser life across countless worlds. But the Highbreed carry a devastating twist that turns their whole philosophy into tragic irony. Their obsession with racial purity, their refusal to ever mix with lesser species, has led to catastrophic inbreeding over generations, and as a result, the entire Highbreed race has become sterile and is slowly inevitably going extinct. Their pursuit of perfection is literally killing them. The dying purists decided that if they cannot survive, they'll take the rest of the universe down with them, which is what makes their genocide plan so desperate. And the resolution is pure Ben 10 heart. Rather than destroy them, Ben ultimately cures their genetic decay by using the Omnitrix to reintroduce diversity into their DNA, saving the very species that tried to exterminate everyone. No, what makes it land even harder is that the Highbreed leadership genuinely believes it is doing something noble. They aren't cackling for the sake of cruelty, they're utterly convinced of their own righteousness, which is exactly what makes real-world supremacist ideology so dangerous and exactly why the show's takedown of it hits. When Ben cures them instead of killing them, forcing the diversity they hated back into their bloodline to save their lives, it's not just a plot resolution, it's a thesis statement. The thing they despised was the only thing that could save them. The message could not be clearer. Purity is death, and diversity is survival, delivered inside a kid's cartoon about a boy with a watch, and it's one of the most quietly bold themes any children's action show ever built a whole season around. The DNAliens. Every genocidal empire needs an expendable workforce, and the Highbreed built theirs by stealing bodies. The DNAliens are the foot soldiers, shock troops, and slave labor of the Highbreed's campaign, but they aren't a natural species. They're victims. The Highbreed mass-produce alien parasites called xenocytes, small leech-like creatures that latch onto a host of almost any species, and once attached, the xenocyte begins altering the host's mind and fusing with their body, gradually transforming them into a DNAlien, a hunched, mind-controlled hybrid drone loyal to the Highbreed cause. Entire populations, including kidnapped humans, are converted this way, their identities overwritten, their bodies turned into disposable servants for a race that despises them. And there's the cruelty at the heart of it. The Highbreed consider the DNAliens themselves to be repulsive half-breeds, contaminated by the very host DNA that makes them useful, so the slaves are treated as vermin by the masters they are forced to serve. The DNAliens deepen the horror of the Highbreed arc by giving it a body count that's also a rescue mission. Every DNAlien Ben fights might be a person underneath, a converted human or alien who could potentially be saved if the xenocyte is removed. It transforms the conflict from a simple war into something more disturbing and more hopeful at once. An enemy army made entirely of hostages, wearing the faces of the very people Ben is trying to protect. The Incursians. If the Highbreed are cold genocide, the Incursians are loud, aggressive, and weirdly hilarious conquest. The Incursians are a species of frog-like aliens from the planet Incursia, and they've built themselves into a roaming, conquering empire, a fleet of warrior gangster amphibians roving the galaxy under the command of their tyrannical, blustering Lord Emperor Milius, subjugating one planet after another. There's a tragic origin buried under the comedy. Their homeworld was destroyed during a war, leaving them a displaced people who now conquer other worlds because they no longer have one of their own. But in practice, the Incursians play as one of the franchise's most entertaining threats. A militaristic frog empire with a pompous emperor, a rebellious warrior princess named Atia scheming for his throne, and an army that's genuinely dangerous, but also perpetually undercut by its own dysfunction and infighting. In one of the biggest arcs of the later series, the Incursians actually succeed in invading and occupying Earth, forcing Ben and his allies into a resistance against an occupying alien army. The Incursians strike a balance the show loved, a real conquering empire with real stakes, capable of taking over a planet wrapped in the absurd comedy of tyrannical space frogs squabbling among themselves. The Princess Atia is a highlight all her own, a scheming, power-hungry teenage warlord constantly plotting to overthrow her own father, giving the Frog Empire a layer of family dysfunction on top of its conquests. And Ben even gets his own Incursian form, an alien he uses to infiltrate the invaders by posing as one of them, turning the enemy's own species into a disguise. They prove Ben 10 could do a full-scale alien invasion storyline, occupation, resistance, collaborators, the works, while never quite losing its sense of humor about a galaxy ruled, in one corner, by amphibians with a chip on their shoulder and a royal family that can't stop trying to overthrow itself. The Ruters, the most disturbing group in Ben 10, isn't an alien empire, it's a rogue faction of the good guys, and their target was Ben himself. The Ruters were once the Black Ops wing of the Plumbers, a covert, off-the-books division created to handle the missions too dark for the official organization to acknowledge. But over time, they went rogue, splitting from the Plumbers entirely and pursuing their own ruthless agenda under their manipulative leader, Cervantes. Their crimes are genuinely horrifying by the standards of a kid's show. The Ruters experimented on children, kidnapping and mind-wiping a group of young alien-human hybrids, implanting them with false memories and using them as living weapons, all while erasing the truth from their victims' minds. And their ultimate goal became the elimination of Ben Tennyson. Cervantes and the Ruters convinced themselves that Ben was too dangerous, too unworthy of the Omnitrix, a potential threat to the entire universe that had to be neutralized. The reveal that some of Ben's own allies had their childhood stolen and their memories rewritten by a rogue plumber faction is one of the darkest turns the franchise ever took, dragging the show into territory about trauma, false memory, and the abuse of authority. What makes the Ruters land is that their victims are people Ben knows and trusts, allies whose entire tragic backstories turn out to have been written by a plumber splinter cell that treated living children as raw material for weapons. Uncovering the truth doesn't just mean defeating an enemy, it means helping those victims reclaim the memories and identities that were stolen from them. The Ruters matter because they break the show's comfortable line between the heroic plumbers and the villains. Proof that the institution protecting the galaxy could rot from the inside, that good intentions can justify monstrous acts, and that the scariest enemies are sometimes the ones wearing the same badge as your friends. Team Tennyson. After all the empires and armies and rogue factions, the most important group in the entire franchise is just 3 people in a car. Team Tennyson, Ben, his cousin Gwen, and their sometime enemy turned best friend Kevin, is the heart the whole series is built around. And it's the group that actually holds. Ben carries the Omnitrix, the watch that lets him transform into dozens of alien heroes, but he'd be lost without the other 2. Gwen grows from Ben's bickering cousin in the original series into one of the most powerful characters in the franchise, revealed to be part Anodite, an energy-being species wielding raw magical mana that repeatedly saves the team. And Kevin, who began as one of Ben's earliest and most dangerous enemies, a boy who could absorb energy and matter, driven half-mad by his powers, is redeemed into a loyal, wisecracking ally who can absorb any material to armor and arm himself. Together, the 3 of them are the counter-argument to every villain group in this video. The -10 collapsed because villains can't trust each other. The Forever Knights splintered the moment their leader left. The Highbreed died of their own obsession with purity. But Team Tennyson, 3 mismatched people with completely different powers and personalities, endures precisely because it's built on the things the villains never had: family, loyalty, growth, and forgiveness. That's the whole thesis of Ben 10 hiding in plain sight. Even the Omnitrix itself reinforces the point. The device was created by a brilliant alien inventor named Azimuth, not as a weapon, but as a tool to promote understanding, letting its wearer literally walk in the skin of 1,000 different species, which is why it works best in the hands of a kid backed by people who love him rather than a conqueror who wants to use it as an army of one. That's the difference between Ben and Vilgax in a nutshell. The same watch, aimed at connection instead of domination. The most powerful group in the universe isn't an army or an empire. It's a hero who never fights alone. From the Plumbers to the Forever Knights to the Frog Empire of the Incursians, the galaxy of Ben 10 is really a story about groups, the ones that hold together and the ones that tear themselves apart. Which of these groups is your favorite, and which one do you want a full deep dive on next? Drop it in the comments.